This is episode 137 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Chantal Duame. Chantal is the founder and managing partner of Good Neighbor Realty out in the Denver area. They work with investors that believe the good life, and we're going to get to this, includes a great real estate portfolio. Chantal, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Jonathan. I can't wait to dig in here.
Yeah, me too. And you come well recommended, as our previous guests, both Mike Brockway and Sina Getmiri were both like, you need to talk to Chantal. And I'm like, I'm already following her. I don't know why I haven't talked to her. So I'm excited to have you on the show and we could do this live or recorded for the future.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Those guys are great guys. Yeah, I'm lucky to be connected with them and have worked with them for sure.
Yeah. So with your story, were you an investor first or were you a realtor first?
So I was an investor first, or I like to think of myself as an investor first. And I never wanted to be a realtor. My business partner had to convince me to get my license because he was tired of like listing the properties
Yep.
that we were finding for flips.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up being a realtor. I originally, was just reading books on how to become a real estate investor, and it was like flips and wholesales. And then I was like, okay, this is the path. And I started doing that and then realized that getting my license would be a nice addition. And then everything changed after that.
Would you say it's a good idea to get your real estate license? Just on the basic yes or no question. I'm a hard yes. What are you?
I I'm gonna say no just because you said yes, and I could be
Yeah.
convinced either
Now we can
way.
have a good debate as to why, though, because I've had this with other guests as well.
I'm gonna take a no. And the reason is I don't believe you can be a good realtor that's part-time. And so something that is actually admittedly, and I'll start this podcast by saying it, something that's a huge distraction for my personal investments is my real estate business.
Yeah.
And so, and so I think that well, yes, like in an ideal scenario, sure, you can represent yourself. You can save 3%. Like when you purchase a property, you can save 3%. When you list a property, you're learning everything that you need to know about doing comps and all of that good stuff. If you're not getting enough reps in, you're going to be so bad at those things. And so I just think that without the experience or the commitment to being a producer, you're never going to become a good realtor. And I think a good realtor far exceed like the 3% that you're going to save in trying to be an amateur to do it on your own.
That is fantastic. And I agree with that 100%. That's why I like to ask these questions. The reason I am a hard yes is for those people that we're talking about. I'm not into part timers as well, because I think then you're not servicing your clients well and you're also going to fail yourself, like you said. It's like I always liken it to, obviously, I was an attorney. I always liken it to someone being charged with a criminal case and then representing themselves. It's like your freedom's on the line. You're not good at this. Don't do it. And I agree, a real estate agent, especially when looking for short term and working in that capacity for investments, is worth well more than the amount that you would save. So we're on the same page there. I think for access, it's really, really good for investors, because if you're a new investor and you're also looking for a way to make extra money and you can look at all the dumps that come out, you're getting those reps that you need by seeing properties, where these days we have so many investors who are like, oh, I've looked 20 properties this week. I'm like, what? How many did you look at in person with your eyes and your nose and everything? They're like, oh, none. I'm just like playing around on the internet. And that's not going to work. You agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And I do think that you're right. Like, especially if you're someone that's like, I want to do this full time. And that's really what started it for me. I was like, I want to get into real estate investing full time, but I still need income.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I have nothing to invest. And so, if you're someone that's like, I still need income, I want my income to come from real estate as well, whether that's being a realtor or a flipper. And I think if you are a flipper, I actually am a hard yes on you getting your
Yeah.
license.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't agree with like the thought of, if you have your license, then you can't do as much as a flipper. I'm like, if you're an honest, ethical person, you're going to be fine with your license as a
Yeah.
flipper.
Yeah, and I look at it as like it's like a collective. I just like real estate. So when I got my license 10 years ago, my sister was like, dummy, we've been doing this for more than 20 years together. Like, why didn't you just have it before? I'm like, that's a really good point. And then I realized like it really is fun to do it together. And I know from the trajectory of what you do, you realize as an investor, you have so much more to offer than your traditional real estate agent because 99% know nothing about investing. No offense to them, they're just not experienced enough to understand what investors want. Is that what's helped you kind of put these together like I do as well? I'm like, hey, this is just real estate. I like it all.
Yeah, I definitely think so, and I think you and I share this heart in like, it is so sad to me that realtors do not understand the fundamentals of real estate investing
Yeah.
or real like, why
Really,
would you
real estate. It's because that's real estate. Everything's an investment. What was the first property that you bought after your primary residence? And I also agree, like primary residence have been some of my best investments over my whole life.
Yeah, so my first property was that primary residence, and that one was really the catalyst for me. So I guess, like, to back up, I was doing the flipping, I was doing the wholesaling, I was working with foreclosure clients. And somehow during that process, my business partner now convinced me to get my license. And what I realized when I was going direct to seller was the volume was really low for me. And that was an important thing for me to realize, like, as a part of who I am. Like, I need a higher level of volume. I'm not someone who wants to chase 3 big deals a year. I like having multiple deals going at once,
Yeah.
and well, I didn't like that, and then I realized that I could really help a lot of these people by being a great listing agent and then helping them deal with their foreclosure. My husband and I had just purchased our primary residence. And on a whim, we were like, let's just try to rent out the basement as a short term rental because our long term tenant friend fell through. And we were making like $3,000 a month on on our basement in like 2017. And I was like, I didn't know that this was possible. I was thinking like $1,000 a month. Why is talking about this? And so at that same time, I'm like showing up to meetups and people are talking to me about like their long-term rentals or this or that. And I was like, why is not everybody doing short-term rental? This is the best. The property is like perfectly maintained. I have a cleaner in there every 3 days. I never have to see my tenants. I'm paid on check-in and I'm making 3 times more than everyone. And so
Yeah.
this became like a natural evangelist for that. And then my husband and I ended up building a carriage home on that property. So we're like living upstairs, renting the basement for 3,000, built a carriage home, making $4,000 to $5,000 a month. So we're like literally living there and making like $4,000 in net. And then moved out of that one, ended up renting the unit that we were in for like another 4 to 5,000. And that was like a great first starter home for us. And it was a primary residence, 3.5% down.
How important do you think the ambiance and kind of the marketing of a place is now in the short-term rental space?
It's everything. So I thought that, I was good at design and I'm really not. And that's the first step of becoming a good short-term rental host is just knowing like unless you are a designer and like you identify as a designer, you likely should not be doing your own design. And you really want to work with someone too who is going to specialize in short-term rental. Like for me, when I talk to clients and they're like, well, Chantel, should I buy in like the metropolitan area or should I buy in the mountains? And it always comes down to me like, what are you willing to do from a design perspective? Because if you're going to be in a metropolitan area like Denver, like Nashville, like Miami, the homes there are not innately a destination. Like they're just normal suburban homes. And so you really need to do something that's like going to stand out on the interior. It might need to be more funky. You might need to have a game room. You need to have amenities
Yeah.
and like where you'll see like more themes and things. And those are the properties that are doing really well. Whereas in the mountains or maybe on the beach, the home is truly a destination and you need to lean into why are people coming out there? So like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna buy property in the mountains that doesn't have a view. Like
Right. Yeah. Look at the back of a dirt patch. That doesn't really get the job done.
right. Or, they renovated it so it looks like, an interior of a Denver place. Like it needs to be like rustic and cabiny. And the same for like a beach town. Like, you need to have the proximity to the beach. You need to have like water views or at least like be close enough to that. And like the design needs to fit like what they're actually spending their time there for. But if you're just in a metropolitan, I would say like you want to go more like over the top with like color. And I would say that I'm seeing a big shift too from minimalist to maximalist is
Mm.
what people are really enjoying in today's market.